Hi and welcome. My name is Lawrence Baker and this video is going to be about turning a colour image into a black and white image. Very straightforward, but everyone does it slightly differently. So I'm in the library module, F5 to prove that, that's the module picker, F5 to turn it off, G on my keyboard for the grid. That is the original image. I am not going to work on the original image. I would always use a virtual copy when you're doing a major change, like turning an image into black and white, so you don't touch the original image. The keyboard shortcut is in fact Command or Control apostrophe, Command on a Mac, Control on a Windows system. And if you can't remember that, come up to help and always just type in the first part of the command, VIRT, create virtual copy, Command or Control apostrophe. By default, it'll be copy 1, copy 2, unless you've done a virtual copy for a soft proof, which I've done earlier, and it will have the color profile there. I don't like working with copy 2 or copy 3. I'd like to know why I've created that virtual copy. So with it selected, F7 and F8 to bring back the side panels, open metadata, you'll see copy name there. I'm going to change that to B&W. So I know why I've created it. I know it will look obvious to some people, but that's what I like to do. If I tab away from it, like so, you can see it's changed to B&W there. Spacebar for loop view, Command or Control J, just change that to, let's say, copy name, which is there, and you can see B&W. So you know why you've created that virtual copy. D for develop. I've got no panels showing. Shift and Tab will open all panels. Shift and Tab again will lose all panels. F8 for the right hand side panel. Here we are, we've got our image. Let's turn it into black and white. Up to the menu here, BLACK, convert to black and white, V on your keyboard. Now if I do that, it will always remember the last color profile you use, which happens to be Adobe Monochrome. Let's say I use B&W 5 there. Press V again to go back to color. Go V again, it picks B&W 05. Now I have these available to me. Under Browse, I've gone and clicked here to make them favorites. If I didn't click them to make them favorites, what will happen is it would still pick, or always pick, Adobe Monochrome, and that's my preferred black and white profile. Now, when I've done this normally, I would always go auto, but it looks absolutely awful. Command or Control Z or Z. I'm going to stick with the original basic panel color edits I did because I think they work really well. I'm not going to mess around, but when you convert an image to a black and white profile, you get another panel called B&W, black and white. Now I can go auto now, and it doesn't do that bad a job, but personally I don't like it. So Command and Control Z or Z. I prefer to use the targeted adjustment tool. When you click on it and click in an area, if you click and drag down, it's going to make that area darker because it works on the underlying colors. So if I click and drag around here, it'll probably make the blue go darker, etc., etc. If you click and drag up, it'll make it get brighter. So that's the basic concept. I need to be zoomed in a bit more. F7. I'm going to go to maybe 1:1. Spacebar kept pressed to move around. I want to make that darker. So I'm going to click and drag down. Keep the mouse key pressed. The blue is moving and the purple's moving. I'm making it darker. It's too bright in these areas here. I'm going to make that a bit darker as well. Then I'm probably going to make that a bit darker. And maybe a bit round there, a bit brighter. That's the blues again. I thought it was a bit too dark. Maybe, no, I'm going to bring them down actually. But notice these sliders moving. If I click and drag down, they move to the left, make it darker. If I click and drag up, it makes it brighter. I'm quite happy with that. I think it looks absolutely fine because it's such a good image that stands out against its background. It's got a lot of structure and quite a lot of detail. So Z or Z to come back out again. So now I'm going to sharpen it. That's the last thing I'm going to do. Detail panel. Double click on sharpening to get everything back down to its default settings. Then I'm going to use masking first. The reason I use masking first is I like to isolate the parts of the image that are going to be sharpened. So when I start playing with amount, radius and detail, I'm basically seeing the finished result. You always have to press the Alt or Option key when you use these sliders. So Alt Option key kept pressed. The whiter it is, the more likely it is to be sharpened. The darker it is, the less likely it is to be sharpened. So I'm going to bring it up around 40, let's say. I think that's fine for me. Yeah, 40 would do me. Now I think about zooming in. Now you have to be on 1:1 at the very least. For this video, I'm going to pick 8:1. Spacebar kept pressed. I can drag around like so, or I can go back to 8:1, or I can just move it around the navigator here to get it to where I want it. Right, just like that. Z or Z will take me back in and out. Z or Z to go back in. Now I've done the masking. Now you might argue, well, on the amount you could get away with not pressing the Alt Option key. It's actually true on this slider, but I would always press it for any image, regardless whether it's black and white or color. Now the way it works is, it's like an edge detection tool, sharpening. It finds the edges and says luminosity edges. So let's say that's a classic example there, bright that side, dark that side. With amount, you're going to turn up the contrast, make it more punchier. So Alt Option key kept pressed. Now it will start to break up the image a bit, but I'm zoomed in at 8:1. This is an unnatural zoom. So, though it looks grainy, I need to take that into account because I'm zoomed in. So I don't mind a bit of graininess. Around 60 to 70 is working quite well. Now radius, for that border, let's say, what you're saying with radius is encroach into neighbouring pixels to make that luminosity border wider. So it goes up to 3 pixels. Alt Option key kept pressed. Keep dragging it up. You can see, if you see in this area there, that's a classic border. As I bring that up, the border gets wider. The white is getting wider. I would say around 1 and a bit, about 1.3 is absolutely fine. Now detail is about high frequency detail, like the rivets and things like that. The trouble is with detail, it's on default of 25. It's trying to tell you something. You need some detail, because if you take it right down, Alt Option key kept pressed, you're basically turning off the sharpening. So you need a bit. So let's bring up detail until you see the image break up. Now detail does or can destroy an image. So I'm looking now and thinking actually around 15 is absolutely fine. Don't forget I am over zoomed in. I might put a little bit more on, bring it up to about 18. There is a bit of luminance noise. Detail and contrast don't matter until you move the luminance slider. So you can see it's having a little bit of an effect. Alt Option key is kept pressed, by the way. It's making a tiny effect. So leave it around 10 and just leave it at that. It's absolutely fine, just to take some of the edge off the noise. Luminance noise will be affected by the sharpening. That's the problem with luminance noise. As you make a luminance border contrasty and you sort of expand the radius, you're also doing that to the noise as well. So the reason you use the luminance slider is to get rid of that noise. The trouble is you're also smoothing off the sharpening. So it's a big trade-off all the time. Personally, if I don't need to use luminance, I don't. But if I'm shooting at 1000 ISO, normally I would play around with luminance. ISO of 64, definitely not. I'm over zoomed in. Don't forget that as well. So Z or Z to come back out. I'm on fit now. Let's try 1:1. Turn off the panels, Shift and Tab. I think that looks pretty good, I really like that. I mean, that's the 1:1 view, I believe. F7 to double check it again. Yeah, it is. That's fine. See, that's how people will be looking at the image. I just sharpened at 8:1 so I can show you what's going on. And sometimes I prefer sharpening at 2:1 or 4:1 instead of 1:1, which everyone else sharpens at, because I like to really see what's going on and see if I'm ruining the image. But at this distance, so to speak, for me looking at it now, that looks absolutely fine. That's it, guys. It's very straightforward, converting to black and white, but I try and use that targeted adjustment tool in the black and white panel. That's it, guys. Thanks very much.